Lately, everything feels uglier. It's all a little, off. From my home to my office, everything feels like a 24-hour pharmacy. And I think it's the lights.
This reminds me of like a hospital or...
Yeah. Headlights are blindingly bright, street lamps are all sorts of colors, and weed shops, they need a lighting designer. Turns out, in the last 30 years or so, we've totally changed how we light our world. And on paper, that's progress. The world is brighter, safer, more efficient. So,
was that just being a bitch? Or was there actually something physical?
See how much warmer that is?
Something scientific.
That blue spike is crazy.
To this light feeling off.
Life has never seen anything like an LED before.
So I did some digging.
And I found the moment our lights changed. It was this rare period of time where corporate lobbying and regulatory capture perfectly aligned with good intentions to create something magnificent.
And also something that millions of people experience as off.
Oh my God! Oh God!
One sec. Basically, our ancestors evolved from tadpole to human under the light of sun and fire. And then finally, miraculously, the incandescent bulb. Patented by Thomas Edison, this simple technology truly transformed the world. The process is remarkably simple. Electricity runs through this wire filament, heats it up to about 2500 Celsius, and that produces the glow that we call light. For over 100 years was good enough, even if it was inefficient as hell. 90% of that energy turns to heat, and only 10% actually becomes light. But for most of the 20th century, electricity was cheap, and these worked, so nobody cared. They made us look good, dim smoothly, and generally caused no complaints. By the 1970s in the US, incandescent bulbs were so ubiquitous, so cheap, and so reliable that nobody second-guessed them. Until things got a little intense.
1973.
OPEC embargoed oil to the US and other countries that supported Israel in the Yom Kippur War. Oil prices quadrupled overnight.
Gasoline stations ran dry. Airlines cut back flight schedules. Factories were forced to close.
For the first time since World War II, Americans couldn't count on the basic systems of modern life. Gas, heat, electricity. Suddenly that 90% inefficiency began to feel like an expensive waste.
And I am asking that all of you act now to reduce or eliminate unnecessary lighting in your homes.
And that began a giant cultural shift in how people started to think. Wasting energy became unpatriotic. The lighting industry responded. Manufacturers raced to develop alternatives. And out of this, two technologies emerged.
The halogen and the CFL were noble attempts at efficiency, but they were stopgaps, riddled with heat, mercury, and compromise. While the world settled for these imperfect solutions, something else was quietly evolving in a lab, waiting to change everything.
This technology could pass electricity through semiconductors, basically electrons jumping in between energy levels and releasing photons, which produced light, the light-emitting diode. But LEDs at this point had one major issue.
In 1962, a scientist developed the first visible red LED, but producing other colors, especially blue, at a brightness and efficiency suitable for practical use remained unresolved.
But then, in 1993, Shuji Nakamura at Nichia Labs miraculously figured out how to create a bright blue light. The bright blue was a breakthrough as it finally created light that looked white to the human eye. Nakamura would go on to win the Nobel Prize in Physics for this life-altering innovation. And yeah, it's been life-altering. Through the 2000s, LEDs got brighter, faster, cheaper, more reliable, uniting private and public interests and even Republicans and Democrats. For a brief period in time, really. So in 2007, President Bush signed ESA. It was bipartisan legislation that set efficiency standards. ESA would go on to effectively phase out incandescent bulbs. And it worked, in all the ways. Well, in the unifying way, not for long. But now they are truly everywhere. From LED light strips to the viral sunset lamp to lights behind your TV to our phone screens. It's estimated that almost half of all US households now use LED lighting. And everything seemed pretty fine.
Look, I get why we switched. The energy savings are massive, the durability can be a feat of engineering, and there are so many emerging and established use cases for this technology. But turns out there are a few reasons as to why I found the light is off.
So when we talk about good or bad lighting, we're really talking about a mix of four things: color temperature, spectrum, intensity, and flicker. Color temperature, measured in kelvins, is basically the appearance of light.
So for example, a 2700 Kelvin light is gonna feel a lot warmer than, say, a 5000 Kelvin light.
And color temperature alone can completely change how a space feels. But turns out it's also a simplification, because two light bulbs can have the exact same color temperature, and yet they can feel completely different. Because color temperature doesn't tell you what's inside that light. It's only describing the part we can see, which is the visible light layer.
And in order to see the other two layers, I bought myself a handy-dandy new tool, a spectroscope.
You hold it up to a light and it shows you a pretty full spectrum.
So basically,
Oh my god, I have no idea how to read this thing, so I needed the help of a real scientist.
yes, yes.
Dr. Glen Jeffrey is a professor of neuroscience at University College London, and his research is specifically focused on how light interacts with our biology.
Life evolved over billions of years under sunlight. Sunlight has got this long spectrum of short wavelengths and long wavelengths, and goes over 3 to 3,500 nanometers, a big wide range. And in that, the short and the long wavelengths are in balance. And sunlight is what we call a black body. It's a heat source. We had firelight. Firelight is a black body source. It's got that long balance of wavelengths. Incandescent lights that we all had when we were young, or our parents had, those ones that got really hot, loads of infrared in them. And they were almost like sunlight. Then bang, LEDs come in. Life has never seen anything like an LED before, because now, instead of the spectrum being right out here that we're exposed to, it's a little compressed spectrum, which is only visible light. The balance between blue and red has gone. All the red has gone, the infrared, and the blue becomes dominant.
I was sort of fascinated, and I wanted to see it for myself.
So we're going on a little field trip.
So I hopped around New York and measured the lights around us. Lots of blue dominant LEDs. I found one restaurant that had some incandescents in it, and one store that had a CFL, but otherwise the space was LED heavy. But to be honest, I was still sort of confused. Why is light spectrum such a big deal? If we can't see it, why does it even matter? Safe to say, over the last 30 years or so, LEDs have completely transformed our world. And lately, there's another acronym that is changing our world. AI, of course. At this point, you've probably dabbled in it, saving some time on an email, maybe using it to liven up a strategy deck. But if you've ever been curious about what it takes to actually lead with AI across your team, your organization, or your business, you should check out this week's partner. Masterclass Certificate Program. Lead with AI. Adapt, implement, and transform your organization. Built in collaboration with Microsoft, this certificate program is really designed for professionals to actually use AI in real life. And that includes identifying use cases, rolling out tools across your organization, and doing all of that responsibly. You'll finish the course with a personal AI transformation plan, including pilot proposals, data organization, and governance frameworks so that you can begin applying it immediately. So if you want to level up your AI leadership skills, check out the link in the description for 15% off the Lead with AI certificate from Masterclass and Microsoft. Okay, back to the lights.
You cannot see light that has not reflected off of a surface.
This is Alex. He's a lighting designer at the Lighting Group.
You can only see the light that has bounced off my hand to your eye. Whatever your option of an eye is, your eyeball, a camera, a mirror, all of these items that you see through are going to change the fact that this has a waveform that is going to bounce a certain percentage off of a source to go through other entities before it finally hits your eye and you register what that is.
I wanted to test this out, so I brought in two of my coworkers, made them stand really close together, and experimented with different lights. Can you guess which bulb is which? Huh? All right, I'll just tell you. An LED, CFL, and an incandescent. But wait, don't look at the light bulb. Look at the way the light is reflecting off of Shreyas and Caden. And technically, all the bulbs are 2700 Kelvin, but because the incandescent airs on the red side of the spectrum, you're gonna see a lot more reds. Versus if you look at the LED, it's a little bit brighter and a little bit greener.
Oh God, so maybe that's all I'm responding to. LEDs have a heavier blue spike, which makes them feel colder, more clinical. Makes colors look a little off. But there's something more, there is. And it has something to do with a subreddit that I found. Is there such a thing as too much light?
Definitely.
This is David. He restores and manufactures lights and light fixtures, all from his factory in Brooklyn.
Over-illuminating stuff, I think, is like a troublesome tendency which comes from the inexpensive, ubiquitous availability of these light sources. And I think that we could do more with less light in general. You had asked earlier, like, what makes lighting more human? And I think it's that distinction between light and dark. We evolved for millennia under the sun and the night sky, and then slightly more recently with fire. And that distinction, when you go outside, that you see the stars and then there's a pool of light where there's someone's home or something like that, that's a very primitive and grounding feeling.
Beyond light quality, there are other discrepancies in LED technology that we have to look at. And it kind of has to do with those claims about energy efficiency. Remember? Let's go back to the studio.
Check out this nutrition label. Yearly energy cost, life, and energy used. LEDs use 75 to 90% less energy than the incandescent. They tend to last 25 to 30 times longer, and they can save significantly on electricity. But they may not have saved us as much energy as we thought they were going to. Let me introduce you to an economic principle called Gibbon's paradox, or the rebound effect. And no, it is not about dating. So in the simplest terms, this law states that when something becomes more efficient, we don't use less of it. We actually use more because it is cheaper and can do more things than it could before. So wait, maybe it is like dating. Let me explain. When an LED uses 80% less electricity, running it becomes so cheap that we use far more of it out in the world. Think about all of the new art installations, all of the new billboards. There's track lighting, recess lighting, under cabinet lighting, deck lighting, landscape lighting, TV lighting, painting lighting, carpet lighting, toilet lighting. And because they're cheaper to run, people leave them on for longer. So that 75 to 90% energy savings, we haven't totally seen. We did save energy compared to if we were using incandescents at current consumption levels. But the problem is we just have taken all of those energy savings and applied them to more light and maybe more waste.
We cannot escape the fact that there is an ecological side to this. The amount of power I am using, the materials that I am using to build this, all have ramifications in our world.
See, incandescents were pretty simple, right? There's glass, a tungsten wire, and a metal base. When they burn out, you're throwing away glass and metal. LEDs, on the other hand, are circuit boards, semiconductors, and rare earth minerals. Researchers warn that as cheap LEDs fail, we're creating an e-waste stream that will become massive because these bulbs contain components that don't break down easily and can even leach problematic materials into landfills. While LEDs do tend to have long lifespans, the margins are generally smaller than advertised, and the math only works if they actually last their 15 to 20 years.
15,000 hours?
Oh, so that's made up.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Sorry to break people. So technically an LED never dies. It just gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. Everything else inside of the LED absolutely can die. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're talking about the cheaper entities, nobody's tested those. And you voted for that multiple ways, right? Like it's not just you buying this light bulb. It's you buying every single part of the item that uses those sorts of lights.
Yeah.
And then all of that brings us to another problem, which is maybe how some of you started noticing your lighting. And that's how it affects our biology.
Blue light increases your cortisol levels, which is a big marker of stress. When you're stressed, you're more focused. So ask yourself the question, why is your computer screen blue? It is good for you, as far as your employer is concerned, to be marginally stressed, because when you're marginally stressed, you're paying attention. If you have long-term stress, your life expectancy will be shorter. What we're pushing quite hard for is just changing lighting for public health. It's cheap, it's easy, all the data are published. We've changed the lighting and we've had very significant improvements in people's vision and in people's blood sugars.
It has become an economic issue. LEDs with longer, more beneficial wavelengths of light are just more expensive and hidden behind cost and information barriers. Turns out, like with everything, cheap and expensive light bulbs have different sort of materials. And if you can afford the more expensive choice, you're gonna be good for a while. You're not gonna have issues with flickers. You're probably not gonna have issues with it dying out on you. You're probably not gonna have issues with the colors changing. Versus most people and commercial buildings and office buildings, they're not optimizing for human comfort and human living. They're optimizing for cost.
Good lighting is likely to become a luxury, not because the cost of the thing that makes the light is really expensive, but because, you have easy access to lots of light that's of mediocre quality. And so that's sort of the default position.
I feel that my hypothesis isn't entirely correct. The world isn't necessarily uglier. It is off,
But that's something that we've made the choice to do, and there are ways to fix it. It just takes effort, time, and money. LEDs are truly one of the most amazing technological stories of the past 50 years. But that's not where the story ends. We do need to move forward into a world where we are prioritizing not just energy efficiency, but we are prioritizing lighting for the humans that have to live under it.
Like, why should do people need to care about light quality?
If you pay attention to the quality of light that you're using, I personally feel that it makes you operating in the world around you easier, simpler, or feel better.